Chapter 1. Roots in Rural Ohio. The early life of Phoebe Ann Moses, a log cabin beginning Annie Oakley's story, like that of many American legends, begins in a humble log cabin. Born as Phoebe Ann Moses, sometimes spelled Mosey, on August 13, 1860, in Darke County, Ohio, Annie's first breaths were drawn in a landscape defined by dense woods and rural hardship. She was the sixth child of Jacob and Susan Moses, a family of modest means, eking out a living in the rugged, often unforgiving Midwest. Life in 19th-century rural Ohio was not for the faint of heart. The region, still on the edge of the American frontier, was a patchwork of small farms, dense forests, and muddy roads. Winters were bitter and long, and the relentless cycle of planting and harvest left little time for rest or leisure. Yet, it was in this environment that Annie's indomitable spirit began to take shape. Loss and hardship. The death of a father. Tragedy struck early and hard for Annie. Jacob Moses, her father, was a Quaker known for his gentle disposition and strong moral compass. He worked tirelessly to support his growing family, but the harsh Ohio winter of 1866 proved too much. After getting caught in a blizzard while tending to the farm, Jacob developed pneumonia and died soon after. Annie was just 6 years old. His loss left a gaping hole in the family. Susan Moses, now a widow with 6 children and soon another, was thrust into a desperate struggle for survival. The Moses family, like so many others in rural America, had few resources to rely on. Susan did her best to keep the family afloat, taking in sewing and doing odd jobs, but the grip of poverty tightened. The tragedy did not end with Jacob's passing. Susan remarried, hoping to provide stability for her children, but Annie's stepfather also died soon after their marriage again, leaving her mother alone, this time with yet another newborn to care for. The harsh realities of rural Ohio. The Moses family's misfortunes were emblematic of life in mid-19th century Ohio. The region was dotted with small, subsistence farms, and families were at the mercy of the elements. Drought, blizzards, and crop failures could spell disaster. Medical care was rudimentary, and disease claimed lives with alarming frequency. For Annie, childhood was not just a time of play but of hard work and sacrifice. From a young age, she learned to help with chores, mending, cooking, and tending to her younger siblings. The family's poverty meant that every member had to contribute, no matter how small. Yet, within this crucible of hardship, Annie's character was forged. She learned the value of perseverance, resourcefulness, and above all, hope, the belief that a better life was possible, even if it seemed out of reach. Orphaned by circumstance. The Wolf Trap years, by the time Annie was 9, the strain on her mother was too great. Unable to care for all her children, Susan was forced to send Annie to the county poor farm, known as the Darke County Infirmary. It was a place of last resort for orphans and impoverished families, a grim institution where children worked for their keep. But Annie's time at the poor farm was only the beginning of her ordeal. She was soon bound out to a local family as a servant, a common practice at the time, intended to provide children with food and shelter in exchange for labor. The family, whom Annie would only ever refer to as the Wolves, subjected her to 2 years of virtual slavery. She suffered physical and emotional abuse, was overworked, underfed, and often left to sleep in cold, drafty barns. Annie later described these 2 years as some of the darkest of her life, yet even in this bleak period, her resilience shone through. She would later say that her experiences with the Wolves taught her compassion for the vulnerable and a fierce determination never to be helpless again. Returned to family discovery of talent at age 12. Annie escaped her captors and made her way back home older, wiser, and forever changed. Though still impoverished, her family welcomed her back, and Annie threw herself into helping her mother and siblings survive. It was at this time that her extraordinary talent with a firearm began to emerge. Hunting was a necessity for many rural families, and Annie's natural eye for shooting quickly became apparent. Armed with her father's old rifle, she began hunting small game rabbits, squirrels, quail to help feed her family. Word spread quickly about the young girl who could shoot with uncanny accuracy. Local shopkeepers bought her game to resell to restaurants and hotels, providing the Moses family with much-needed income. Shooting was more than a skill for Annie, it was a lifeline. It gave her a sense of purpose and agency in a world that had offered little kindness. Not only did she provide for her family, but she also began to earn her own money, a rare independence for a young girl in those days. A self-taught markswoman, unlike many of her contemporaries, Annie received no formal training in shooting. She taught herself, practicing for hours in the woods with whatever ammunition she could scrape together. She became adept at reading the land, moving silently, and taking down game with a single well-placed shot. Her reputation grew, and soon she was supplying game to hotels throughout Greenville, the county seat. By her mid-teens, Annie was earning enough to pay off her mother's mortgage, a remarkable achievement for anyone, let alone a girl barely out of childhood. This period was formative not just in honing her skill, but in shaping her identity. Annie learned self-reliance and the value of hard work, but also the importance of humility and gratitude. She never forgot her roots nor the hardships her family endured. A community's daughter, Annie Oakley's early years were spent in a tight-knit rural community where everyone knew everyone else. The people of Darke County would come to take pride in Annie's achievements, but in those early days, they watched as she grew from a shy, serious child into a confident young woman. Her success as a hunter and provider did not go unnoticed. Local businessmen, recognizing her talent, and perhaps the novelty of a girl with such skill, supported her by purchasing her game and encouraging her to enter local shooting competitions. This sense of community, of neighbors helping neighbors, was a defining feature of rural Ohio. It gave Annie both a sense of belonging and a desire to give back, values that would remain with her throughout her life. The roots of resilience. Looking back, it is clear that the hardships of Annie Oakley's early life laid the foundation for her later success. The death of her father, the years of poverty, the abuse she suffered, and the necessity of becoming the family breadwinner, all these experiences forged in her a toughness and self-reliance that would serve her well on the stage and in the wider world. But Annie's story is not simply one of survival. It is also a story of determination and hope. Even in her darkest moments, she never gave up. She found joy in simple things: a well-placed shot, a meal shared with family, the quiet peace of the Ohio woods. She looked for ways to rise above her circumstances, and in doing so, discovered gifts that would one day make her famous. Conclusion: from the Ohio woods to global fame, Annie Oakley's journey from the woods of Darke County to international stardom is astonishing. But it is her early years marked by struggle, perseverance, and the discovery of her own strength that provide the true foundation of her legend. In the fields and forests of rural Ohio, she learned lessons that would last a lifetime: the value of hard work, the importance of family, and the belief that even the most unlikely dreams can come true. Her story is a testament to the power of resilience, the necessity of hope, and the extraordinary possibilities that lie within every child, no matter how humble their beginnings. Annie Oakley's early life reminds us that greatness is not a matter of circumstance, but of character.